Welcome to the Arts and Oddities podcast with A.M. Hall, starring A.M. Hall. Now, here is A.M. Hall.
Welcome to Art and Oddities with A.M. Hall, where I talk about anything that strikes my fancy, to include all kinds of creative works, from children's cartoons to underground zines, to identity politics and everything in between. My guests and I will discuss how art impacts and reflects culture and counterculture, enables individualism and conformity, and have loads of fun along the way. I am your host, A.M. Hall, aka Anthony Bonafini, aka Galena Storm, aka Aquaces Mancuso. Today I'll tell you some of my adventures in wig making, and why it's always useful to be an acting and singing goat. They call that a double threat in the industry. Then in part 2, Mr. Teej 66 and I finally get around to talking about his YouTube channel. We start a feud over the quality of Marty McFly's character and then squash it in a good old-fashioned nerd throwdown, Star Wars versus Star Trek. Stay tuned. Fairly recently, Panic wrote a play, actually, the script for a play. The characters are based on the Greek-Roman gods, and the story is completely contrived by Panic. It's basically just the goddess Aphrodite's marital problems. And it's not a story that comes from the Greek-Roman mythology, it's just the characters that are the same. As a result of the script, we decided to do an audiobook version of it, and we knocked that out in less than a week. Panic and I and Panic's friend Alex Leisure sat down, and the three of us just knocked out the recording, all the characters. So that audio recording is actually available on SoundCloud. I'll put a link in the show notes. As a result of working on this audiobook together, we decided to make a movie of it, actually, and we decided to make a film. We cast a bunch of our friends as the roles. We figured out exactly, what needed to happen visually on the screen. We planned out all the costumes and whatnot, which, that's mostly my thing. Unfortunately, the person that at least one of the people that we had cast to play a role managed to back out at the last minute, and we couldn't really find a suitable replacement, so I guess I'm going to be in it. I'm going to do a little bit of acting. That's something that I haven't really done since high school. But I do get to sing a song. We originally cast the role for someone who we wanted to present musically, and when she backed out, it fell to me, and I'm pretty good at singing, so I'm a natural fit for the role. Because I'm perfectly willing to put on a goat costume and play an auto harp on camera. One of the things we did was we chose a very archaic song in a modern English translation to sing in the film. It's an ancient song. I think it's from like the 3rd century, and it sounds like old music. Like music from ancient times doesn't sound anything like music sounds like today. And it was really a nuisance to get this thing tabbed out. I've actually I've tabbed it out for the ukulele. I don't have a recording of it being played on the ukulele anywhere, but I do have a recording of singing it on SoundCloud. I'll put the link in the show notes there. And I guess I'm gonna act and sing. Even though, what I mostly like to do is work on the background stuff, work on the costumes. One of the things that I'm really, really enjoying is I'm actually making a wig for one of the characters, but I'm making it out of yarn. And I'm making this wig using actual wig making techniques. Like, I took our actor, who's a friend of ours, and I sat him down and I fitted him for a wig using actual, the process that is used. And I took, not wig making lace, because that's a different thing, but I took like a netting that's used in wigs, and I used that to create the base, and I'm using a crochet hook as opposed to a ventilating hook to just, ventilate this yarn, this Red Heart Super Saver yarn, onto this, wig netting that's using actual wig making techniques, but I'm using yarn, and it's one of the weirdest things I've ever done. I'm enjoying myself immensely, and I think it looks phenomenal because the character is supposed to be ugly, and it's supposed to look like a low budget film because that's what it is. The whole point of this is be bold, even if you don't have any money to make a film, you can still make a film. Like there are cameras everywhere in cell phones, and there are ways to make costumes out of everything. We're just using what we have available. And you should too. Make something. Be bold. If you have an idea, just do it. Make art. Go forth and art. All right, I am here with returning guest, Mr. Teej 66.
How's it going, everybody? Great to be back here.
All right. Last time I had Mr. Teej on, we got a little bit off topic, but I was going to have him on to talk about his YouTube channel.
Yes, you were. It's Mr. Teej 66 on it's MRTEJ 66. I talk about movies, basically, both new and old, just whatever my fancy is, I guess.
So, Mr. Teej, what made you decide to start up a YouTube channel?
I just love movies and trying to put myself out there a little bit. Not exactly the most social kind of guy in the world, so I decided, why not, It's something I love since I was a little kid. I just have always loved them. I couldn't tell you what I had for my first birthday or anything like that, or that I can remember, but I can tell you when I saw this movie and this movie, I mean, they're just, edged into my brain, pretty much forever.
Okay, so movies have always been a huge part of your life.
Oh, God, absolutely. I was always the movie geek.
All right. Can you tell me how you structure your reviews?
It's well, I'm still getting used to doing it, so there's not really a whole lot of structure to it. I try to just give a plot synopsis and then, my views on it. It's kind of I'm kind of going a little over the top with it to try to keep people interested. One could almost say I'm mugging for the camera a little bit, but, you gotta do something to keep people interested, so that's what I try to do. I'm an odd kind of guy, so, I may as well just play that up.
And, how do you choose which movies you would like to review?
Sometimes it's, movies that are playing in the theaters, and I have a huge DVD collection. I'm sure we'll see that at some point. I mean, it's the entire bookshelf, so I'll just randomly pick one off there. They say that, you're supposed to be doing newer movies to get more views and everything, but I'm old school, I like talking about the old school stuff that, has influenced me as a person, basically.
Okay. Do you go into, deep analysis, or do you just go over
I keep my videos pretty short, maybe one, 5 minutes or so, just, give my basic thoughts on it. Hopefully when I'm better, I'll be able to go into more detail, but right now I'm still a little camera shy, still getting used to the whole format, trying to upload once a week, so hopefully the reviews will get longer, but for right now, I just basically want to get myself on camera and not screw up.
What genre of movie do you typically review?
I try and do everything, but so far it's been a lot of sci-fi, it's just the kind of movies I loved since I was a little kid, like Star Wars, Star Trek, RoboCop.
Your nerd game is strong.
Absolutely.
All right. And so, who would you say your audience is? Who's your typical viewer?
Well, a little hard to say right now because I'm so new to it, but
in a perfect world, who's your typical viewer?
Nerds, sci-fi geeks like myself. Have seen these movies 1,000 times. I can tell you, look, in the corner right there, there's this and that and the other thing, and in Back to the Future and everything like that,
Mm-hmm.
At one point, you can actually see the mall at the end of the movie as Lone Pine Mall instead. Yeah, she knows what I'm talking about, yes.
The Lone Pine Mall, it was the twins.
You have to have seen the movie a whole bunch of times to get that one, but...
Yeah. Well, someone pointed that one out to me, but it was a long time ago.
Yeah, oh yeah, I actually read it, and I didn't notice it until, I was like, oh shoot, how about that?
Nice catch there. No
yes,
swearing
indeed.
on my show.
I'm sorry, yes.
All right. So this is the type of thing you tend to go over, is the sci-fi, the fantasy, the...
Yes. I mean, I like others. I try and like dramas and everything, but real life bores me. I'll be quite honest, I always liked the more over-the-top stuff. I used to watch Godzilla movies when I was a kid, and I always related to the monsters more than, regular people, I don't... It sounds ridiculous, Godzilla. Yeah. he's a sad guy, you know? He got hit by radiation. I mean, geez, how would you feel?
Okay. Do you relate to the monster being pregnant in at least one movie?
No, I am not a female, so maybe there are some things which I don't, but although in some of the movies he has a son, and we never know who's the mother. Like, it's Godzilla Ace, you know, what is it,
Asexual reproductive.
Asexual, thank you, yeah. I'm like, well, wait, where'd the baby come from? I mean...
He just got fat and divided in half. That's the answer.
He did, but the movies are for kids, so they're obviously not going to go over stuff like that. But I'm basically a big kid, so
right.
you know.
So TJ, what makes a good movie?
For me, well, has to have a good story. I mean, when I was a kid and when I was younger, action was great. You know, stuff blows up. But you know, as I've gotten older and more sophisticated, yeah. You know, it has to have a good story, you know. All these movies today, especially all these summer movies, are just big, loud, stupid, generic action movies, and it gets boring after a while. I mean, I want some kind of plot. And, you know, it doesn't have to be Shakespeare, but it has to, you know, move me in some way or interest me in some way other than just giant explosions, which is why I can't stand stuff like Transformers, which is complete and utter garbage, because there's no plot and there's just...
Right.
It's boring. I could talk about Transformers probably for another hour, but
right.
We don't have that much time, so...
Of course not. No. So, what about character arcs? Does a movie have to have that in order to be good?
Absolutely. I mean, you have to. You have to have some kind of, like, you know...
Haha, I call shenanigans. There is no character arc in Back to the Future.
Yes, there is. What are you talking about?
Michael J. Fox's character, Marty McFly, has no arc. It's just, he just has a bunch of stuff happen to him, and
I
he
don't
goes
agree
through
with
plot.
that.
There is no arc.
He learns to appreciate his father and his parents. It's like they were kids too once upon a time. Right?
I wouldn't call that a character arc.
A character realization or something. He has a little bit of an arc. I mean, yes, George McFly has the bigger arc, absolutely. I'm not going to lie about that, or try to dispute that, but I don't think he doesn't have an arc. I absolutely think he has an arc.
Okay, and what about movies which, you know, don't really have any plot? It's just a bunch of stuff that happens.
Like, what do you mean?
Okay, you know, there's lots of movies. For example, I'm pulling an example out of the sky here. I don't know if you've seen it, but Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which is basically, you know, a bunch of kids in high school where there is no overarching plot to the whole thing. It's just,
I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's just these, a bunch of vignettes, pretty much.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of stuff that happens to these kids.
Exactly. Well, that kind of works because it's just, you know, it's life in high school. You know, it's all these stuff just happen. All this stuff just happens. I mean, Spicoli is, of course, the most memorable character, but and he seems to have the most memorable lines, but really, he's a very small part of the movie.
Okay. Can you give me a list of any upcoming movies you're planning on reviewing?
Well, I'm thinking about probably doing the new Mummy film that's coming out with Tom Cruise. Okay. Although there is another little independent horror film coming out. The name of it is flying right over my head right now. I can't remember what it's called, but it's getting fantastic reviews, so I'm thinking about doing that. It's sort of the thing between, you know, do I want to review the more independent artsy stuff, or do I want to do, like, you know, the big, dumb summer action movie? And honestly, I'm not sure. I'm kind of leaning more toward the little independent film, because I'm getting a little tired of these big generic action movies. Although Wonder Woman was fantastic.
You know, I have actually not seen Wonder Woman yet. I understand you've recently done a review on Wonder Woman, but
that's correct.
I haven't seen the review yet because I don't want to be spoiled. I'm going to see the movie in like a few days.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I was very shocked at how good it was, you know, because we are reaching a point where it's superhero overload. I mean, I grew up on these characters, even I'm getting kind of like, all right, you know, we're getting one a week, so it's like, okay, you better, you know, do something amazing to impress me. And I was blown away by how good it was.
Okay.
Great writing, fantastic performances. Gal Gadot absolutely killed it as Wonder Woman. I mean, to the point where I didn't even care that she was a woman. She was just a character who had a full-fledged arc.
Okay, you know what? You have reached post-feminism, Mr. Teej.
Well, that's great. I didn't even care. It's just a character with an arc. The fact that she was a woman was irrelevant.
You know what? I'm actually probably going to invite you back to review Wonder Woman.
Okay.
We'll talk about your review on Wonder Woman once I've seen it, because I still don't want any spoilers because I'm seeing the movie in a little bit.
My lips are sealed.
All right. Let's go back to a very classic nerd debate: Star Trek versus Star Wars.
One of the great debates.
So you and I actually had a conversation about this recently. You posted on Facebook. You said, Star Trek or Star Wars? And I said, do I have to choose?
And I said, yes.
And I said, I choose the airlock.
And I said, you coward, how dare you, take the easy way out.
So there's that. Of course I choose the airlock.
I thought it was a 2001 reference for a second.
Oh, well, they've done that in both, all sci-fi shows, is like, if they're in outer space, shoving someone out the airlock is a really great way to kill them.
Oh, to get rid of them, of course.
Yeah, so, they've done that in Star Trek at least a few times.
More than a few times, yeah.
More than a few times. Well, they've beamed people out into space, too, I think.
They have they? I can't recall. I'm more Star Wars and Star
They did not do that on screen, but we did see dead people floating in space, and with the implication that they were beamed there.
I may have to check that one out. I don't remember that. Is it in some of the newer movies?
That was on an episode of Voyager.
Okay, see, I stopped watching Star Trek after about The Next Generation, so, yeah.
Okay, yeah, no. Okay, so, the reason I chose the airlock as opposed to Star Trek or Star Wars is because I literally grew up on both. I do not remember a time in my life before having never seen either of these things.
Oh, me too.
So, and I remember, like, watching, Return of the Jedi was on TV one night, and I remember I was very young, and I was turning to my dad and said, "Oh, I really like this movie. I've seen it before." So that's all I remember.
Yep.
Because I don't remember having had seen it prior to that moment, but I remember knowing that I had seen it before.
Oh, I remember vividly seeing, but I mean, I could talk about Star Wars for another 2 hours, but we don't have that much time. But yes, absolutely. But I remember watching Return of the Jedi on videotape. That's right, kids. Remember video? Or, you probably don't remember.
Oh, God, remember when the Golden Special Edition came out with, like, silver and gold on VHS?
Oh, yes, indeed. Yes, I remember those. Yes, indeed. I mean, I watched it on an old school tape. It probably looked like complete garbage. I mean, probably from like 1986 or something like that. So, yeah, the old school.
The old school.
We're about the same age, so we remember all.
Okay, so, and I literally grew up watching Star Trek The Next Generation,
I did. Oh, absolutely. That was probably, of all the Star Trek shows, that was the one that I think most people of our age watched because it was the most widely broadcast, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was. Yeah, I think you were probably right. No, and I remember, like, I watched Deep Space Nine starting with the premiere, and I was so excited because there wasn't just one Star Trek on TV, there were two!
I remember watching the premiere, but I remember I petered out.
Did you?
I kind of got over Star Trek. I watched the movies a lot because I'm a movie geek. So
all right.
Yeah. Oh, the original cast, the ones with the original cast. Oh boy. I mean, I even like the motion picture. No one likes the motion picture, and I love the motion picture.
Okay, that's interesting. No, I like movies just fine, but I prefer to watch an ongoing series. So
I think I have ADD, so that's probably why I like movies better, because it's like, a shorter runtime. I mean, I do watch some TV, but like, I think my attention deficit kicks in a little bit. Like,
shorter span.
Well, what's the end? What's the end? Come on, I want to see the end, and you can't see the end yet. It's not for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if the show's still going.
Mm-hmm. But no, every time I watch Star Trek, every time I watch Star Wars, I get to see something new. I think of something new.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Star Wars is more, pulp sort of adventure than intellectual depth. Although there is some big themes in it, I'd say, about family and fathers and sons and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But Star Trek is definitely the more philosophical and probably has the more layers to it. Were I to be completely honest with myself, because I do kind of like Star Wars more, but I will acknowledge Star Trek has more depth.
I think Star Trek has more depth to it simply because they had more time to go into depth.
This is true on the TV shows and stuff. I mean, there have been some Star Wars TV shows, but not quite as many. I don't know if anyone here remembers the Ewoks cartoon. You remember the Ewoks cartoon?
No, I did not see it, and I don't feel like I missed anything.
Ironically enough, that was the first Star Wars related thing I ever saw. Before the movies, before anything, I just remember watching the Ewoks cartoon and being like, "That's pretty funny. I like it."
All right.
There was even a Droids cartoon show about R2-D2 and C-3PO, which I've never seen.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars. I gotta go with that. If someone were like, tie my hand or
gotta go with Star Wars.
Threaten to break my arm if I had to pick one. Yeah, it's Star Wars. It's closer to my heart.
Okay.
It's a tough decision, isn't it?
That's fair enough. And
I can understand your reluctance.
It is a tough decision. That's why I picked the airlock before. But if I really, really had to choose, I think I would pick Star Trek.
Ooh, we seem to have very different opinions, but that's okay. That's good.
No, again, it was a very close call. But...
Yes. I mean, I do like Star Trek a lot, too. I have, if there were a nerd debate, I'd be like, I'd probably be on the Star Wars side, but then I'd be like, okay, but they got a good point too over there. It's not bad at all. So
All right. So we've been talking for about 15 minutes. It's probably about time to wrap up. I'm gonna allow you to plug your YouTube channel once again.
thank you. It's Mr Teej 66. It's capital M, lowercase r, Teej 66.
And see Mr. Teej's 66's YouTube movie reviews. What TJ over here does is art. Thank you very much for coming on once again, Mr. Teej.
Thank you very much for having me. I hope to be back again.
All right. Well, that's it for this segment. Stay tuned as we wrap things up. Thanks for listening to the Art and Oddities podcast with A.M. Hall. That's our show for today. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and give us a review on either iTunes or Google Play. Or if you're listening via YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe. You can also follow us on Facebook. Join our group at facebook.com/groups/oddartpodcast or on Twitter at twitter.com/artodditiespod. The production and editing of this podcast has been provided by Reverend Panic Evelyn Bedlam, and without her it would not exist. If you'd like to support this podcast, please become a patron at patreon.com/panicbedlam. That's PANIKBEDLAM. As we produce more shows, we will be putting more content on Patreon exclusively for patrons. You can also help Panic by buying her books or tarot cards. You can find them by searching Panic Bedlam on lulu.com and thegamecrafter.com. Direct updates and show notes are available at panicbedlam.com/podcast. I am happy to announce that all conflicts with our web domain have been resolved. Our theme music, Doxel Dance in Spacetime, or Belial and His Seven Wives, was composed and performed by Kion Huru Orion, or as I know him, Michael. Thanks, Michael. If you would like to contact the show with comments or suggestions, you can email us at artodditiespodcast@gmail.com. Since the airing of last week's episode with Mr. Teej 66, a GoFundMe page has been set up to help him acquire some new duds. I'll put a link in the show notes. In this episode, we mentioned Nyx Eradicatus, who can also be found on YouTube. In an earlier episode, we talked about how her videos were ASMR, but she has informed us that that isn't the case, but they are inspired by ASMR principles. Next week, I talk even more about my magical robe. And I also visit the New York Fairy Fest, where I interview several craft vendors and even a few magical folk. That about wraps it up. Remember, the highest form of magic is doing, and expressing yourself is art. This is A.M. Hall, signing off.